Hi, welcome to the next part of the fur in pastels, and this time we're going to be concentrating on a black bay. It's actually a spectacled bay from a photograph I took not so long ago. Now I wanted to start off by taking a quick look at some photographs of black animals or parts of black, and I wanted to show you how many different colours they can be. This is a Rottweiler, and you can see there's lots of blues and lots of greys. So here's the bay that we're going to look at, and I've just drawn or photoshopped this black line all the way across once again to show you just how few blacks there are on there, and whereas there's more of these greys and cool greys on there. So you can do something like that yourself, and it really shows out easily what are going to be very black and what are different shades of black. So I'm going to use pan pastels to block in again. I've got my drawing on that pastel matte paper, same as in all the other drawings that I've done, and I'm just going to use these pans to block in just to show you how I do it with this animal, because I know lots of you have actually gone out and bought some pans, and the pans have got very good set of greys, lots of these kind of Payne's grey, a slightly bluey grey, and I found that that colour or those range of colours are very often found in wildlife art, so it's a really good range to actually get hold of. But it could have done exactly the same, as I always tell you, with the Conti sticks especially. They would have been really good for this, or something like Rembrandt soft pastel sticks. They would have been excellent as well. They just are a bit firmer than, you know, expensive very soft pastels like Sinelia, and very soft pastels, if you're using those for the blocking in, could fill up the tooth of the paper really quick if you're not careful, and you're not as likely to do that with the pans unless you use them very heavily, and certainly not going to do it easily with the sticks. So just blocking in, as I always say, in the fur direction, because some of these tones may well show up on the latter layers, so we want it all to go in the correct fur direction. Now this is just pretty much a quick sketch that took me around about 1¼ hours to do. Say a sketch, you know, I completed to a fairly good level of detail. It's quite small. Small subjects are not the easiest to do with pastels because you're limited with the, you know, the amount of detail and sharpness you can get on a pencil even. So that's why you find a lot of pastel artists, if they work in detail, they would paint and draw quite large. So they do something like this at probably an A3 size. Then when you see it on your monitors, it looks really, really detailed. But in real life, it wouldn't be that detailed. It's just because it's shrunk right down. So I'm starting off by getting the darks in, as usual, working from dark to light pretty much. It's not a, you know, a hard and fast rule, but that's how we work really, or how I work with the pan pastels. Now lots ask me how I select the colour of the pastel paper, and if you go for something like one of those pastel mattes light grey or mid-tone grey, that will suit almost all subjects, and this brown colour is pretty good as well, as long as you don't want things to be too bright on it. So if I was doing something like a white swan, I probably would select a lighter paper. But other than that, these mid-tone papers, you can't go too far wrong with it. Okay, so I'm just going to continue now this process, working lighter and lighter with the pan pastels to block things in. So that stage only took me about 5 or 6 minutes to do. As you can see, I wasn't particularly critical with the colours on there. And all I'm doing now, I've got a stump, as you've seen in my other videos, and I'm just blending in. Keeping in the fur direction, using it on his side. This pushes the pastel into the paper. The stump will also pick up some of the excess as well, and I find this allows me then to get more layers on there. So it's pushing it down into the depth of the paper. So obviously what I then get is, you know, the little ridges, because it's a sanded paper, are then available above it. They're showing through again microscopically, and they'll take more layers again. See, I'm blending as well with it, just like you do perhaps with graphite. Only with the pastels you can pull things around and move things around a lot more. You can see still being very mindful now of that fur direction. Using it on the side just so I can cover a larger area, and I'm not poking into it with the point then. You know, I'm really blending out. If I'm going into a more detailed area, you can see I'm using the tip more. You can see as well, you can borrow a little bit of black off the pan if I want to do some smaller areas, because this is going to be my underdrawing, my map, showing me where those lights and darks are. But don't get too wrapped up in getting everything exactly where it is. At this stage, it doesn't need to be perfect. So just continuing that bit of a blend. I was thinking on this scene, is this really all about fur, just to actually do the fur and perhaps not even the whole subject. But what I think I'll do, just to show you some other techniques and doing other things as well, I'm going to actually do a bit of the grass in the background and the water. I'm not going to put too much effort into it, but I'll show you the technique that I would use. So I'd do exactly the same if I was really concentrating on it, just take a little bit more time. So I've got a Conti stick, and let's get the base of the green in first, the mid-tone of the green. Now this grass kind of goes all over the place, so I'm not worried about the direction of that as much as I would be with the fur, and I'll also get some of the blue in for the water as well. And the top left of the reference photo that I took, you can see that's burnt out because I was concentrating on getting the fur right. So I wasn't too worried about that because I wasn't going to draw it, but I may print off another drawing later that'll have the exposure correct for that area, and then I can put that in as well, just to make it all look a little bit more finished and realistic. Perhaps one day I'll give this away on a competition on Patreon or something like that, so it'll stand it on its own as a drawing if I finish things off a bit. But like I said, I'm not going into too much detail with the water and the grass. Just get something down on there and see how it goes. So just going to carry on now, blocking a few colours in. Okay, so with those blocked in, now I'm coming in with the Conti sticks. Now if you haven't got Conti sticks, you could go straight in with the pencils, because what I'm really doing is darkening areas down and also going to start to layer on the fur texture, so going lighter and lighter all the time. When I want more details, that's when I'll come in with the pencils. And as always, you can see that I'm getting the texture in, so the dark areas in between the shiny bits of fur. So at this stage, everything should be looking a little bit dark, a little bit drab, because we've got to have it like that to get the highlights on top. And this is a simple one to do. So if you want to practice it, have a go of it just for practice purposes. That's great. Hopefully then, if you're going to share your work then on any of the art forums, groups or whatever, it'd be appreciated then if you would actually give my lessons, my tutorials, my Patreon channel or whatever, a quick mention on there, just to spread the word. So the main thing to get right with this is not the colours, because within reason the drawing's going to work no matter what colours I put on this. So if I go to a browny black for the highlights, or a bluey black, or perhaps even a reddy black, as long as the tones are correct, when you see it away from the reference photo, it's going to look okay. The shape and form is going to be correct. So it's the tones we're looking for, those lights and darks. So now I'm going to carry on a little bit more with the water, the surrounding area, just so when I do the face and the fur, I can overlap a little bit. So it's usually a good idea to get the, the layers that are underneath in, at least partially in place before you start layering on. And I'm not going to be doing many layers with this because it's a study. I'm not going to keep working hours and hours and hours on something this small, but I'm going to get it quite detailed, so I want to be able to layer onto the background. And just generally getting this light blue tone. So if you squint at the screen now, you can see I'm not dark enough on that shadow area down by the foot, but for the water I'm not that far off. A little bit dark, in the middle of everything. So I can get the highlights on top. Blend in just with my finger. Don't need to blend too much because there's lots of little stones under the water. So a bit of texture is not going to hurt. Then I can come in with a bit more dark, just overlap slightly. And we're not going to have any of the paper showing through. So just darkening areas down. That's the beauty with pastel. We can go dark to light, light to dark. We generally want to go dark to light, but we can always adjust it, just as I am now. Okay, so let's make a start with the pencils, and I've got a Pitt pastel pencil, P-I-T-T, going in, trying this out for the blacks, because I've got, fairly decent set of these building up now. They was on sale in the art store, so I grabbed some. But you know what I find? I've only really used the blacks, or the black, and I find that it just doesn't layer easily on top like I could with this Carbothello. You can see how much darker it goes. Now if I use the Pitt and the Carbothello just straight on the paper, they both come out the same blackness, but when I go to this Pitt, it just will not go on top of the surface. It just will not go on there. And that's a Caran d'Ache there, and that's softer again. Now it doesn't, I don't know what it is, but it doesn't seem to be that the Carbothello is softer than the Pitt. They're both fairly hard, but for some reason that Pitt will just not go on top anywhere near as easily as the Carbothello when I put an underlayer down. Now I think the other colours in the Pitt range don't seem to have the problem. It's as if they're black, however they've made it, just doesn't want to lay down easily at all. So using a Caran d'Ache just because it comes out a little bit blacker. If you've only got the Carbothello black, that's fine. You probably wouldn't even be able to pick up the difference on the monitor at all. So just going in with the darker darks. They're very, very slightly darker than the pan pastel. And with that I can just get some more suggestion of fur direction. But as I said, you probably won't even pick it up. I can only just see it with my eye, but I know it's there. And the Carbothello almost identical when I use it. So just going to carry on, clean up the edge. I think I might as well lay a bit more of this down, getting that bit cleaner. I was going to just leave it as it is, but I will, I think, come back and actually finish that top bit of background off. Just blend in slightly with my finger. Just rubbing it in. So just going to do a little bit more work on this background, the water, the grasses. Just touching things up here and there. Just a suggestion of the river bank edge on there. Now just going to do a little bit of work on the face. Not much detail on this at all, it's just the suggestions. The viewer's eye is going to fill in all the details that's required, so there's no need to go crazy on it. I just need to get the shape right and the tones right. And I'm using a hard stump because I don't want to go blending out too far, but I want to push this into the tooth of the paper. It fills it up, it'll make the darks look a bit darker. And I can blend out just a little bit with it as well. And then it's simple to come back in with those lighter pencils and just put in the mid-tones and highlights, and there won't be much more needed for the face at all. So this is all still just, you know, pretty much blocking in, just getting things in the right place. You know, try your pencil out. Is it the right colour? I'm going a bit faster than I normally would if I was doing something, you know, really serious that I wanted to get perfect. Not happy with that colour either. Sometimes you just haven't got the colour, and then you've got to start layering a bit more, and that is what I think I'm going to have to do. And layer some greys over the brown to get those tones right. That's more important. Now what shall I select for the lighter tones? It's more of a pinky light tone, so let's try that first. I Carbothello's has got a lot of the, well, a good few of the creamy coloured pencils. I'm just going to carry on and continue this process now over the face. As I said, there's not much work to be done on there. There's not much detailing at all required. And the video, I really want to spend more time on that fur. So just the suggestion on this river bed. So just put in some of those pinky tones and the yellowy highlights. And what I could then do is come in with a lighter blue and kind of very softly glaze it over the top. But I'm not going to spend too much time actually on it. Let's get the darker colours in first. And then I can come in with some of the more lighter tones and blend them a bit. Just here and there, not going too crazy with it. Not worried about the details too much. Okay, so let's start with the pencils. So as I mentioned, lots of lovely various greys in the Carbofello range, and starting off dark. So I'm going kind of up a step from the black first, and I'll put those in, and then I'll come in with the next step up and the next step up, and by step up I mean lighter, and I'll keep doing that all the way to the brightest highlight. And now is the critical time to be definitely going in the fur direction, being observant of the reference, looking at the small areas where fur changes direction, because don't forget, that's exactly what is telling us the shape of the body, the shape of the bones and the muscles underneath. It's the fur, how it's catching the highlight and the direction. So it's going to show us all those undulations that make this look like a bay. So that's what we've got to get right. So I'm going to start dark and work light. Now we can also use the sticks, sharpen them to an edge or point with sandpaper, and we can use those just like the pencils, and they work really well because they've got lots of greys and various blue greys in their range as well. So once again, they're superb for black subjects such as this. So I'm getting some more texture in. Where I blended it, creating those first few layers, I want to put the darks in again because they blended all together and blended a bit lighter than I wanted. So that's not a problem. Making sure I had enough darks down in the grasses as well. If I'm going to actually draw the grass, I'm going to need to overlap and overlay that. So you can see textures back in. Using my finger to blend, because that's not going to push the pastel all the way around like the stump blender. So it's just softening it very slightly with my finger. You can push quite hard with the pastel mat though. It's not going to go smudging all the way across easily. So as you can see, just continuing the technique, there's not much actually to see at the moment. You can see I'm doing the same thing all the time. I'm just following the direction of the fur, and I'm just going with a slightly lighter pencil. And when I go to the more to do more of the highlights, the lighter highlights, that's when you're going to actually be able to pick it up a bit more. But bear in mind, it's still quite a quick technique compared to coloured pencils. When you're doing something like this and it's taking about an hour and a half, hour and 45 or something like that, you know, that's pretty quick because it's going to look fairly realistic, I think, at the end. So just go in lighter and lighter with the pencil, creeping up on those highlights, as I like to say. So now I've gone a step or so lighter with the pencil. You see still those greys. As I always like to remind you, the photograph on the top never seems to reflect the same way as the pastel drawing. So you're going to see differences. But when you do your subject in real life, you know, try to match the reference. And bear in mind also, you know, sometimes you just haven't got the colours and you're going to have to make do. So you can see I'm overlaying, overlapping the strokes. I'm looking at those lighter areas. I'm squinting sometimes to see if I've gone light enough yet. Just bring some of these darks out, overlapping the water as well. Okay, I think I'll have a look at just putting a suggestion in of these water ripples. More control with the pencil. Just a suggestion. It's going to look fairly realistic anyway, but I'm not too concerned about spending a lot of time getting the colours really spot on. Just going to doodle over here a bit. Soften slightly with my finger. Just to give the impression. Because the main subject's the bear, I want to concentrate on the fur. So just roughly following the reference. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but what I've done, put the darker layer down first, and I'm putting the higher highlights on top. And we need some of the blue here as well. I could go a bit darker really on this bottom section, but it's not really critical at all. Okay, so let's take a look at the grass. That's something a bit different for us in pastel. Important thing is get the dark layers in first. If we haven't got the dark layers in, then we're going to have to come back and start to fiddle around by trying to get darks in between the lighter layers. Otherwise the lights are not going to show up. So we always may have to come back in and touch things up anyway. But let's give ourselves the best chance, get the dark layer in first, and then we can start to put these lighter layers in. Now there's a lot of higgledy-piggledy grasses going in all different directions, so I'm just going to follow them quite loosely. I'm not worried too much either about the colours, as long as I can get these lighter layers on top. If they look a bit more punchy, that's fine, especially in the foreground. If it's a bit more punchy, it comes forward even more. So you can see these grasses grow that way, coming over to the left, and then these are longer ones kind of lying flat. And these are not the lightest strokes yet. So I'll keep that pencil up there, keep it out so that I know which one I've used. Going for the more of the creamy colours. Now we've got some detail on the basil leg and fur, so I need to get these foreground grasses detailed as well, otherwise it's going to look a bit strange to have them blurred out. So you can see I'm overlapping now these lighter tones. Let's pick up something, rather than sticking with that, we'll pick up some of these more sienna colours, see how they show up on the bay. You can put a darker tone down then a lighter on top and it'll look slightly different, and vice versa. And just dragging some of these grasses out, making sure I'm not obliterating all the black fur. This is the beauty obviously of pastels, where we can go over the top of the underdrawing. So just sharpen. What I need now is, you know, a nice sharp pencil to get these little highlights, little tiny marks. So I have to keep sharpening the pencils. I just start building up these layers, just like I would be doing fur, but obviously the colours and where it is telling us it's grass. So a few more in some other different directions, pushing harder when I want a real distinctive mark. And then the final bit really is to go in with the whites and the creams a bit more, just to really boost up the highlight. But that looks fairly good. I'm quite happy with how that's turned out. Obviously you can play around with grasses and things as much as you want. So let's get a few. I like these grasses in the front as well. Whenever you've got something like that, it pushes things back. So by putting them in, instantly it's pushing back that the water, and then you're getting more levels in your artwork, more depth to it. Okay, so let's come back now. I've printed out a new photograph so that I can actually see some details of the that rock work there on the background, and not going to do much more with the water. I could really detail that up and spend a good hour getting that spot on with those little rocks underneath, but what I'm going to do is just do a little bit of work actually on this background on those little rocky areas, just to give the suggestion. That'll add another element of depth to the drawing, and as I said at the beginning, it'll finish it off, you know, it'll make it a little postcard size drawing of its own. So just going to go in now, dark to light again, so just suggestions now of these small rocks on the water bank edge. And stumps come in all different sizes, so you've got small ones for small work, larger ones for large work, and they're so cheap they're not really worth making yourself. So you can see all I really did there was create some darkness, some texture, getting that on so that I can then come back in and put the highlights on there. But it's all quite subdued, it's all, you know, going into the depth, it's all a bit blurred. Nothing's as sharp as the grasses and the bay. So that makes them be the centre of interest, the more dominant feature, and everything else is more subdued. So just going to lighten up the highlights, the mid-tones and highlights, little round strokes to represent these small rocks and boulders. Well, rocks and stones really. Some are a bit larger, like these ones at the top, but nothing overly detailed, nothing overly dramatic going to be on there. So all that's really left to do now is just some fine tuning, bringing out a few hairs here and there. I don't think I'll go much lighter actually on the highlights of the bay. It's difficult sometimes to video when you're doing a black subject like this. The cameras obviously want to lighten up too much, or they get confused and start darkening things down, so it's always a bit of a constant battle to try and get all the strokes to show up so you guys get to see as much of the techniques as possible. I'm not too concerned how the colours now turn out on lots of them. I really want to show you the technique so you can use it on your artwork. So all I'm doing now, I've got that Caran d'Ache pencil, remember that's one of my blacker pencils, and I'm just re-establishing some of these darks that have gone a bit pale. I think the riverbed, since I didn't spend a lot of time on it, reads correct, looks like a riverbed. The stones in the background look pretty good as well. The grasses have come out okay. And the most important thing was to show you how black fur is pretty much anything other than black. And if I'd had a lot of blue pencils, I could have got more of a bluey black in there, which would have worked just as well. So a few finishing touches. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Hope you've perhaps learned a couple more techniques. Hope it's cleared up some things with blacks, because don't forget these techniques will be the same for black dogs, black panthers, anything like that. So you will need to really see other animals to get the handle on blacks. And try doing the stripe on there, it really helps. See you again real soon.